Last month, you conducted a focus group among cadets at West Point. Can you tell us about that work?
It was such a joy for me because there's not a shred of politics or partisanship among them. They can't, by rules, regulations, and laws. And these young cadets of the military academy work so hard. I like to compare the average college student does 20 or 25 hours of class. These cadets are working 80 or 90 hours in various requirements, academically, militarily, and physically. And they're such amazing people. I was in New York with a group of them yesterday. They help individuals across the street. They'll make sure that cars don't turn into a crossing lane.
Well, I want to come back to you to hear more about this, but while you get some water, why don't we listen to a portion of those cadets talking about dealing with differing viewpoints among themselves and building character.
Point teaches you how to disagree with the people you have to work with because you're here for a greater purpose. And so you have to put aside your personal differences and find a solution.
How does this place develop character? And the kind of character that this country needs to fight successfully in the wars of the future.
So we all talked about growth, but it's not just personal growth, it's growing together. And through the 4 years here, we all grow together, we all learn together, we rely on each other. So in taking that to the military then in a broader aspect, it's not just sacrifice for ourselves, it's sacrifice for the people to our left and right. So we have to be willing to say, for you know, battle buddy, I'm willing to sacrifice whatever it requires for us to get the mission done. There's also a hope for the future between all of us. So there's the understanding that if we sacrifice for each other, we are enabling each other to create a brighter future for our country tomorrow.
Frank, what lessons do you take away from your conversations with those cadets for the rest of us, especially in our discourse?
That I don't feel like I deserve them, bluntly. It's why I spend so much time working with them. I respect them so highly because of their courage to do the most amazing, back-breaking work to learn how to defend this country. Their character. A cadet will not lie, cheat, or steal, and here's the important part, and will not tolerate those who do. Their sacrifice of weekends, of summers, while other kids are off in the beach or hanging out in the local community, these cadets are training and learning. I appreciate their commitment to intellectual pursuits. The academic rigor at West Point is unlike any university I've seen, because you don't get to sit back. You have to participate. And lastly, they are a group, and they seek to raise each other up as they seek to defend the Constitution. And their articulation of their pride in this country gives me pride, gives me hope. And if the viewers who watch me know that I'm pretty negative about where we are right now, the divisions and the polarization and the poison that's in our political system, I firmly believe that West Point is the antidote. And I'll tell you one last thing. Any parent who sends their child to become a cadet, to attend West Point, they are going to be blown away by what comes back. Decency, civility, respect, and true greatness. I can't speak highly enough about those West Point cadets.
Well, hopefully we'll have quite a bit of civility in the upcoming conversation. We're ready to hear your calls.
And I'm going to go back 1 second, because I so need to keep the politics out of what I'm about to say, but I don't want to lose this show. There is a complete interview with the West Point cadets. It's on Straight Arrow News. You click on America Speaks, and you can see the entire video. And what I promise you is you'll never hear the word Trump or Harris. You'll never hear the word Republican or Democrat or Independent. And you'll not hear a negative word from any of them. It's about a 20-minute video, and all you will hear is all the good that still exists in the American people, and that commitment to service. Straight Arrow News, America Speaks, you can see the whole thing. I apologize, but it is the antidote to the challenges that face America right now.
Let's hear from Kurt in Mount Union, Pennsylvania, on our line for independence. Good morning, Kurt.
Good morning. Good morning, Frank. My question is sort of a question. Now, you spent time with the West Point cadets, and the strength of our nation is commonality and pride. Pride in the nation, pride in the fact what bonds us together is we have common goals, common views. Now, what we've seen is across all military branches, and our military is all voluntary at this point, we've seen a decline of enlistments. So the problem is there's been a lot of cultural angst against the country of America, and we've denigrated it to the point that no one or no young people no longer take pride in it. So therefore, no one wants to fight for a country that they don't believe in anymore. What my question is how do we remedy this in the future? Because this is a threat to our national security, because eventually you're not going to have anybody that would want to fight for this country.
Well, we remedy it by what's happening about 70 minutes outside New York City. We remedy it by celebrating those who do serve and those who are the best, the top 1/100th of 1% who are there. And by the way, the diversity, every state, every congressional district, every income level, every educational level, people who work with their hands, people who work in farms, people who work in every community. There's no place that looks more like America, sounds more like America, and feels more like America, a unified America, than at West Point. Now, let me give you statistics behind your question, because of all the questions I'm going to get today, yours is the most important. 2/3 of Americans, 66%, feel that they're invested in their country, which is lower than it should be. That means 1/3 doesn't really care about the country. But when we ask them, do you think your country's invested in you, it's only 31%, which means that 2/3 don't think America cares about them. And that's a disaster. I want to give John Kennedy, we go back to it in my class every single semester, the idea of ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Do you realize if you did that right now, you'd be defeated? That people are asking, are you going to protect my Social Security? Are you going to increase my Medicare? Are you going to make it easier for me to afford prescription drugs? All important and all absolute priorities. Are you going to spend more money in schools for my kids? Are you going to make my highway? It's everything is what's in it for me. And what Kennedy was saying back then, we don't have people who do this anymore. Ask what you can do for your country. That's why these cadets at West Point are so special and should be celebrated and protected. That's why people like you get a chance to ask a question like this, and a person like me gets a chance to answer it. Thank God for C-SPAN. Thank God we live in a democracy. But we shouldn't take it for granted, because democracies throughout history have existed. They've risen and fallen. And usually a democracy lasts about 250 years. Well, guess what? That's what we're coming up to right now. I actually am afraid for where we go from this point forward. I am afraid that we're tearing this country apart, and I do not take it for granted. And so I say to every caller, because I know we're almost done, but I say to every caller, before you deliver that negative, that bite to your question, just remember that there's no place else on earth we'd rather live, most of us would rather live, that there's no system of government that has provided so much for so many than this one, and that we've had to sacrifice. We can never say thank you enough to those who've sacrificed for us to be able to do shows like this and call in shows like this. We can never thank them enough, but we have to try every single day, because God knows how much worse it could be and would be if we lose this awesome country.